What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Do you feel that in the air right now? It feels like next generation hardware launching this week, and it's exciting stuff. Looking forward to both consoles launching, and I'm really looking forward to getting a hold of the PlayStation 5 finally this week. We do have quite a few things to go over with next generation in mind, as we did get a patch for Watch Dogs on the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S, but turns out it's the Series S that is surprising a lot of people, and we'll talk about why that is here. Also, I want to go back into some of the PlayStation 5 information that we received over the weekend, because while I did touch on it a little bit on the second channel, more information's come out, and I also want to go over some of the strange storage situation currently happening around the PlayStation 5. Guys, if you enjoy these videos, make sure that like button helps out a ton, and if you're new here, hit that red subscribe button down below as we push towards 500,000 subscribers. And we're going to start today with Konami, because why not? Look, there's been a lot of questions around backwards compatibility for the PlayStation 5, and for the most part, they've all been answered, but there was one that continued to come up, and that was PT. A lot of people liked it, even though it was a demo. It still has this cult following. It's not a full game, but there have been a lot of questions around this game being playable on the PlayStation 5, and interestingly enough, it was playable until the publisher decided it should not be playable, and that would be Konami. According to Gematsu, they got word from Sony that was the case. Konami said, no, we're not having PT playable on the PlayStation 5. So it sounds like they did more work making sure that PT would not work on the PS5 than if they just left it alone and just played because the PS5 just happened to be compatible with it. It's Konami being petty, I guess. I don't know. Maybe they just want to finally leave that thing behind on the PS4, but I don't think fans of the series are going to go quietly. And I say series even though it's a demo. Still, though, I think it'll be brought up. Who knows? Maybe in the future the PS5 gets hacked or something and people figure out how to get it on there. But I wouldn't be shocked if that happens. However, at least for fans of the Silent Hill series, those rumors seem to be coming back more and more online for Silent Hill being shown, I don't know, somewhat soon. You know what would be cool is if we saw it at the Game Awards. That'd be a really good spot for it. Also, we talked a little bit about Marvel The Avengers when it came out, but to be honest, I fell out of it because it felt very much like a Destiny-style game. A game that wasn't necessarily supposed to be a Destiny-like live service, but it turned into it midway through development, and it turns out out of the gate, it hasn't been doing very well for Square. You can see this tweet here. This is from David Gibson reporting on the situation. Square Enix reported that there was a 6.5 billion yen loss for HD games driven by Marvel Avengers. Would not say how many sold, but the volumes were 60% of plan. Implies game cost over 100 million to make, but only sold 3 million or so. It goes on further to say that it looks like the total cost of the game is closer to 170 to 190 million, given they only expense 70% of costs in the quarter plus marketing costs. Why somebody didn't say stop post the multiplayer beta will remain a mystery. That most likely is why it did turn into a live service game, because it's going to cost too much. I mean, really look at the licenses and all of this around it, the partnership with Marvel. Yes, it was going to be a very costly, very expensive game, and maybe it wouldn't have worked for them even if they sold 5, 6, 7, 8 million copies of it as a single player game. And they're hoping it looks like, because they say that they're looking to still make money on it in the future, to just continue it into the next generation as just a live service game overall. But it is a shame, because that game should have been really, really good, and it's like below average at best. Oh, and while most of the time wrestling games come out, usually it's the new WWE game, and except for this past year because they skipped a year. Hopefully that means that development overall is much better with the next release of their series. But what about AEW? Because it sounds like they have an announcement coming up this week, and we can see this tweet here. This is from Sean Ross saying AEW is working on multiple games and they're catering to different platforms and interests. They want a best-in-class console game. They're going to put out a booking game similar to TEW by the sound of it too, and they go on to also talk about how there could be a mobile game. It sounds like AEW is going to try to hit all different gaming markets at once, and the one that obviously I'm really interested in is the idea of them going up against WWE 2K series on consoles, PC, all of this, and that would be good to have actual competition in that part of the gaming space, since whenever a 2K game comes out from WWE, usually it's a laughing stock. We make fun of it. There's tons of glitches, or it runs like it did on the Switch with 2K18. So I like the idea of this being pushed a bit with another company trying to do something there. So we'll see how it turns out. It also has to at least be able to stand up against WWE 2K. As glitchy and buggy as that is, it at least has to look like it has similar quality. So we'll see. Not sure when they're going to announce it, but there has been a lot of rumors around this week, and we'll keep an eye out for it. And guys, with some of the quick news out of the way, let's get into the bigger stuff. Let's start right away with this new patch for Watch Dogs Legion on the Xbox Series X and the Xbox Series S. What this has done, appears, is added ray tracing. That's right. If you go around now, you can see Modern Vintage Gamer put out a tweet when he first saw it on his Series S, by the way. That's right, the Series S appears to support full ray tracing in-game for Watch Dogs Legion at 1080p. It is 4K, it seems, on the Series X. I'm sure we'll get full analysis of all of this from Digital Foundry. Now, from what I've been able to tell, it's not like super high quality ray tracing with some of the reflections that we see in, yes, puddles. We're going around looking at puddles again. And I told you, this is going to be the generation of mirrors. You can see from MVG, they turned like the entire road into one big mirror. Now in the game, it was raining, of course, so you look at the ground and it's supposed to be reflecting, but they're very clear reflections. They might want to like chop them up a bit or muddy them up to kind of be more like real life, I guess. Either way, it is a cool effect. I played around in the game a bit after the patch went live, and there are some really cool times where people will, yes, be walking by either just overall a window and you see the reflection there, different cars driving over puddles. It does feel more lifelike, and it is a really cool thing to see. But the Series S, a $300 system, doing ray tracing at 1080p is extremely impressive. Like this Series S, it's all over the place, isn't it? Some days we're talking about how it's doing 900p in a game, and now we're talking about how it's doing 1080p with ray tracing in the new Watch Dogs game. Now, there are several videos of people doing walkthroughs, going through the city, showing different things off. So if you check out on YouTube, MVG did one, I know Tom Warren did one, and a few others as well, so you can check those out. Like I said, I went through on the Series X, and it's a neat effect, but I do hope there are a few things that come after this. One, I hope ray tracing isn't really just to the point where everything's just a mirror. I hope there are some cool instances, maybe some things that do tie into gameplay when we get to the point where we have just Xbox Series X and just PS5 game and they're not cross-gen and it's just kind of tacked on as an added effect. And two, for Watch Dogs Legion specifically, I hope we do get a 60 frames per second mode from Ubisoft. I get that they're probably toying around with some of the games and next gen to see what they can get out of some of their open world games. Like this would be ray tracing at 30 frames. And then I guess Assassin's Creed, they'll do 4K at 60 and they'll see how things are received and which way they want to go with it. But I like the idea of optional modes. And unfortunately, Watch Dogs Legion at this time does not have that. So maybe we'll get a patch. This just dropped randomly. It broke the game for a bit. Then it came back online and seemed to work well with ray tracing. But I will say, I'm very impressed with Microsoft's Xbox Series X S. Their $300 system, their $500 system is pretty impressive for the build quality, but the $300 Series S with ray tracing capabilities, we're hearing more and more about 1440p in some games like Squadrons, Star Wars Squadrons from EA, and it's going to be interesting, for me anyway, more interesting to see what the Series S can do going into this generation, because we already know the X is very powerful, but the S is still kind of surprising a lot of people with what it's able to do. Next up, let's talk about the PlayStation 5. A ton of reviews dropped right at the end of this past week. I did a video on the second channel just kind of going over a lot of the key points that were made in some of these reviews, almost like a bit of a roundup. But there was one part in there that I thought was pretty important. I figured we'd go over it somewhat here today, as well as some other information that came out over the weekend for the PS5. The big one here that's kind of catching a lot of people off guard is that the external hard drive that you might have at home ready for the PS5 won't be able to store PS5 games. I don't mean play PS5 games off of it, but be able to store them to the hard drive. That's something that Sony did tell us we'd be able to do, and Microsoft is currently doing it with their Xbox Series X games. You can't play it off the hard drive, but you can move them over and then move them back if you just want to free up some storage without having to use bandwidth or have to wait for everything to download again. It was at least a good idea, as we have kind of a bridge to when we do get those NVMe drives ready to go for the PS5. As it stands now, from what I've heard from different reviewers and people who have the system, if you put an NVMe drive in the PlayStation 5, it'll basically come up with a message that says that you can't do this right now. That's kind of it. It is locked out. We're waiting for an update at some point after launch, and hopefully it's not too far into next year, because at this time, if we can't move anything to a hard drive and we can't install an NVMe drive to expand the 667 gigabytes, we're gonna be doing a lot of deleting and re-downloading of different games. Now, I do want to point out we should expect a day one patch for the PlayStation 5 on release, so we'll see if that's just part of it. And right now, as MVG pointed out on the podcast this past Saturday, make sure you check out the Spawncast there, that reviewers, maybe they wanted to make it so that they couldn't have things pulled off of the system ahead of launch for data mining and things, in case someone did get a PS5 early and maybe thought to do that with some of the games. Now, as for the PS5 itself, when it comes to the overall noise of the system, turns out it's very, very quiet, as several videos are now popping up on Twitter of people getting really close to the PS5 and just hearing kind of like wind noise almost, but very, very subtle. And it's just the fans spinning. It's nowhere near as crazy as like the PS4 Pro would get, or even the regular PS4 over time would get pretty loud. This is like nothing. You can barely hear it at all. Like if you're like sitting maybe 3 feet away, you're probably not gonna hear it. So really happy to see that one. But then we get more into the backwards compatibility side of things, and we do see some games like Sekiro and Hitman 2 just have a clean 60 frames per second. Monster Hunter World doing that as well. But then we have some strange cases like The Last Guardian, where if you have it on disc before you patch the game, it's uncapped, so it will hit 60 frames per second, but a patch was pushed to the game through development, and it capped it at 30, which is kind of annoying for a system that is very capable and able to push that game to 60. And to cap things off here, it does look like there is an icon that is starting to be pushed to different people's PlayStation 4s currently that will allow you to remote play your PS5 to your PS4. And you might be wondering, why would you want to do that? Well, think about it this way. If you get a PS5 and you have it set up in your living room, and maybe your PS4 Slim even gets kind of pushed to like the bedroom or downstairs or something, you can then remote play your PS5 to that room. So you're almost like you have two PS5s, kind of. It's still remote play. There still will be some input latency, of course, but I mean, it's better than nothing, and it's, I don't know, it's a cool solution to come up with two PS5s on the fly. But I guess you'd also be able to use your DualShock 4 then through your PlayStation 4 to play PlayStation 5 games. So are we sure we can't sync the DualShock 4 up? Either way, I do like that addition. It's a good way to get some use out of what would end up being a retired system anyway that you might put in the closet. Now you can just kind of move it over to another part of the house, different room, and still get some use out of it with PS5 games. Next up, let's talk about Microsoft and Japan. Now, we already know Microsoft has had a hard time selling Xbox systems in Japan, and it's pretty obvious. If anything's going to change, it's going to be up to Microsoft to make an effort to change things. We were to the point where they were selling these Xbox systems as Blu-ray players instead, because I guess that just made it more sellable to people walking in. It's very weird to hear about that, but it does look like Microsoft is currently approaching several different Japanese studios, and this is according to VGC citing Bloomberg. Xbox is continuing discussions with Japanese game developers big and small as it continues its search for studio acquisitions in the country. So that would be interesting, because we've heard that Sega's kind of fallen on some hard times now, and I keep seeing that one brought up. Would Microsoft really buy Sega? Maybe? I mean, that you never know with Microsoft. They are the ones who dropped the bombshell that they were buying ZeniMax, and it's like, wow, okay, so anything's on the table here. Sega? I mean, it could happen. You really never know with that. Bandai, maybe? But the one that is brought up here, as a lot of them wanted to remain anonymous, just they were talking about some information that's supposed to be private. One that was brought up as a company that was approached by Microsoft to fund different games, not necessarily buy them, it seems, was Koei Tecmo. And that's not a bad idea to do that, as we are hearing more and more Japanese developers and studios say that Sony is kind of moving more west now. So they're not viewing Japan as kind of the big market for them that it once was. So Microsoft might see this as an opportunity to try to come in and make up some ground and maybe become number two, because number one is Nintendo, and I don't think anyone's like trying to run them down. They basically roll through Japan no problem selling Switch systems at all. I mean, there's whatever 15, 16 million systems now already in the Switch's life. But if Microsoft could sell 1 million Series X or Series S systems to them, that's like a 10 times jump from what they did with the Xbox One. So we'll see if they make any massive moves, big acquisitions, but it really seems like Microsoft means business over in Japan, and we'll see what they do. Also, Microsoft, this one's free. Lost Odyssey 2. I'm just saying, it could work. Why not? Let's take a shot. In our last bit of news, let's talk about Mass Effect, because we did have N7 Day over the weekend, and it looks like that Mass Effect trilogy, it's called the Legendary Edition, was real. And it is coming out next year. They say spring 2021 currently, and that is set up right now for the Xbox One, the PlayStation 4, and the PC. We were told that there wouldn't be a Switch version initially at launch, so kind of put a pin in that one, and we'll revisit that next year. It's EA. I mean, they do some weird stuff. We see Need for Speed just randomly be back a month, even though it was seemingly ready, as people actually downloaded it from the eShop by accident one day. Anyway, Mass Effect Legendary Edition 2021, it looks like it will have 4K resolution, better frame rates, and it will have enhancement patches, according to EA, for the PS5 and the Xbox Series X, but they did kind of stress these are remasters, not necessarily remakes or any of that, so we'll see how the first Mass Effect holds up, but I mean, the second one is amazing, so this should be a really cool package to pick up for big-time Mass Effect fans, but goes a little further than that. It looks like there is indeed a new Mass Effect game in development. EA did stress, along with BioWare, that it's in early development right now, but they have a veteran team on this one. So I'm hoping that means we're not going to get another Mass Effect Andromeda. It was funny when it first came out, but sad at the same time. They spent some time working on it, they fixed it up a bit, and really, if you play it on the Xbox One X now, or even the Series X coming up this week, it's not nearly as bad as it was when it first came out. It was like hilariously bad, but still kind of sad. So anyway, yeah, look forward to that. I'm excited for the Mass Effect Legendary Edition. I think it's gonna be really cool to pick that one up next year, 2021 in the spring. We're still waiting for more information, gameplay, anything like that. The trailer they released was like 45 seconds, and it was just to kind of announce it with the title card and some shots of the different characters there. But either way, more Mass Effect. Excited to see EA and BioWare back at it there, and here's hoping it's not Mass Effect Andromeda 2. Then we'll finish up with the comment of the day, as you're seeing here. This is from Fletcher saying, I guarantee you the reason Super Mario Party continues to do so well is because it's the only Mario Party on the system. If there was a Super Mario Party 2, the numbers wouldn't be nearly as high. Well, I mean, yeah, they probably wouldn't be, but if they did do Super Mario Party 2, I would hope that they at least have the idea of making the game better and having online multiplayer, because Super Mario Party, when it came out, I saw it and I said, all right, well, there's not as much content here as I was thinking, but we see examples like Splatoon 2, where it keeps getting stuff, or maybe they'll do that. And then they just never did. And it keeps selling. And it's probably because it's a good family game. Like, you buy the Switch thinking, okay, I'm gonna put this in the living room, we'll all have fun playing it together, and really, Mario Party it's a digital board game. And it works well with friends around you in person, but like, the online isn't great. You would get kind of tired of the same boards because there's not a ton of them there. If they had add more through just content updates, that'd have been great. With how well it's selling, I can't believe they haven't, but I have to assume that the next Super Mario Party is coming, and that's where all the ideas will be. Not like free updates, they'll just sell another one. And ladies and gentlemen, that's gonna do it here for Newswave. If you enjoyed this video, guys, hit that like button, really helps out. If not, hit the dislike. Leave comments down below about everything we talked about here today. Well, there's next-gen consoles this week. Are you getting one? Let me know which one, or are you getting a couple of them? Let me know down below. And are you impressed by the Series S doing ray tracing? Remember, a $300 system, 1080p ray tracing in Watch Dogs Legion. And then what about the PS5 and its storage concerns right now? It's strange that the external hard drive isn't storing PS5 games at this time, but maybe there is an update on launch that we'll find out about. Thanks guys for watching, and I'll see you next time.